False flags are nothing new. Calling them out isn't conspiracy theory behavior. In fact, many false flags are so obvious, it takes intentional and willful ignorance to believe them. One glaringly obvious historical example is the Reichstag fire, where the Nazis set the Reichstag building ablaze so they could blame it on their enemies and enact reforms that locked in total governmental control. Seldom in history do we see a straight-up coup by tyrants. They like to set things up first or weasel their way into legitimate authority before using a false flag to cement their power and prevent it from being challenged. Another example of a false flag being used to solidify authoritarian power is that of the coup attempt in Turkey in 2016. It was haphazard, designed to fail, and the conspirators didn't attack anything that would get them what they want. It was designed to be flashy and to not succeed. The media spectacle, however, was the perfect backdrop for Erdogan to implement many legal changes that made his power functionally permanent. History is replete with examples that show if an emergency can allow the government to ignore the law, then there will always be an emergency. But few people embrace that statement with anything more than a vague mistrust of the news and government. They don't know if the war, pandemic, or surge of race-based violence is real, entirely manufactured, or exaggerated for the sake of justifying more social, economic, and political controls. There doesn't need to be a big, splashy false flag where people die for this to happen. Using a legitimate threat such as the data collection, spying, and intellectual theft of China as justification for passing a blatantly unconstitutional bill such as the TikTok ban or Restrict Act is a perfect example. This potential law would essentially be the Patriot Act on steroids and gives the government almost unlimited censorship power and control over the internet. It is the Big Brother government's dream come true, and it isn't even a Democrat or Republican issue. It is being pushed by people on both sides because people on both sides want more power. There is a fine line between exaggeration and false flag, and the media is most responsible for towing that distinction for the powers that be. False flags don't even have to be something done by a government. For example, Jussie Smollett hiring random thugs to beat him up in a fake racially motivated attack is a false flag. In fact, this is more worrying than the government engaging in false flags. If private citizens are getting in on the game, then there is a clear evidence that there is a culture that is willing to bend reality to fit the narrative. And that really is all false flags are. Be it a nation seeking a casus belli or a political party seeking to manufacture evidence that their political opponents are extremists, false flags are real-life versions of Thanos putting on the glove and saying, "Fine, I'll do it myself." The left truly believes that the right are racists and Nazis, and when the right refuses to do racist or Nazi things, they will make up fake attacks and dress up as fake action groups and march around in masks with Nazi symbols while claiming to be part of the right. The Patriot Front is an obvious example of a false flag operation at work. I don't know if they are just founded and funded by the feds or if every member in the entire thing are feds, but they don't even change their workout routine or uniforms to fit into the role they have picked for themselves. They march around as caricatures of the left's idea of what a modern Nazi would look like. They are cartoonish attempts at bringing a blatant misrepresentation to life. Reality is never perfectly represented by a narrative, yet the Patriot Front is the exact description the left paints of the uber boogeyman of the right Nazi. It is nothing more than leftist propaganda, a boogeyman to get their base out and vote. In the same way that calling everyone a Nazi dilutes the word Nazi rather than makes your opponents Nazis, when you send agitators into all of your enemies' events, it dilutes any credibility you have in that accusation. The skullduggery and lies have gotten so bad that nobody believes that anything is actually caused by the people that the media and government are saying caused it. and that is the crux of the issue. Without the enthusiastic participation of the media, false flag operations would quickly fall apart. Because journalists don't do their jobs, it is left to citizen reporters to unmask the blatant corruption and false flags that fill our world. That is why the Patriot Front still have to wear masks, even though the media wants to push the same narrative as their government overlords. Because individuals like you and me can and will identify federal agents that participate in those marches. There are only two reasons to wear a mask to a protest. One, you plan to do something that is illegal and you don't want your face to be tied to the crime. And two, you expect your government to take action against you even if your behavior is entirely legal. Clearly, the reason these people wear masks is not for fear of government retaliation, but because they fear being identified and tied to the political and governmental organizations that they serve. Now we get to current events. Recently, a bunch of U-Hauls have been used in shady dealings tied to the Patriot Front, and the Patriot Front is an attempt to tie the right to Nazis. An escalation of this is the recent U-Haul that ran into a gate by the White House. They claim the subject is a white nationalist despite the fact that the driver is Indian. This is similar to the Mauricio Garcia shooting in Texas, where the media tried to paint the perpetrator, a Mexican gang member, as a white supremacist. While it sounds laughable on the surface, the left is so completely invested in their narrative that they have lost the ability to sense irony or cognitive dissonance. It has been shown time and again that all the left has to do is send someone to drop a Nazi flag or literally carry a Nazi flag at a conservative event in order for the media to paint the entire event as Nazi. There is nothing more literally false flag than to send someone who doesn't agree with a protest to that protest with a flag that the protesters don't identify with, use, or agree with, and wave it to paint the protest as affiliated with that flag. When fake news becomes forced narrative, and that narrative is questioned, those in power will seek to support the fake news with manufactured facts. Sometimes these are real events with doctored elements or fraudulent focus. Sometimes these events are entirely manufactured and never happened. And sometimes they are false flags, real events by people pretending to be perpetrators or victims. They wouldn't need to do this if they just wanted to live their lives. People only manufacture tragedy when they want to perpetrate another. This is the literal manifestation of the statement. If the government is allowed to ignore the law in an emergency, then there will always be an emergency. False flags are these emergencies, be it fake ethnic cleansing and Nazis to justify an invasion, or fake domestic terrorists in the US to implement First and Second Amendment restrictions. The progression of events is always the same. They identify a right they want to infringe and then manufacture the perfect boogeyman to justify their actions. All in the name of safety, because the fear and uncertainty a false flag creates is there to make you prioritize safety over freedom. Because when it comes to statecraft, that is always the goal, to get people to give up their freedom for safety. All manufactured tragedies are false flag events, and every good politician knows to never let a good tragedy go to waste. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.